All right, it is Sunday night, the weekend of November 10th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Taking a look at the price action for the indexes last week, starting with the NQ as always. What do you see there, Price?
Well, we gained all-time high and continued going. So we did put in this level here and actually continue up from there. So as long as we hold this low, it looks like up will continue. If we did come down, it looks like 20,900 would be the next level as an opportunity to grab and then regain and go from. Failing that though would be 20,748. And that may sound like a pretty big margin there, but on the daily here, you can tell that this is a very big level, previous all-time high. This is a very big level of interest, and nothing goes straight up like we talk about pretty regularly. So this is a great area to be looking at, and then down below that 750-ish, those are both two very good levels, and even down lower here at 630 looks good to me. But I would be dialed into the lower time frames, watching what occurs at those levels, and you can see how on the lower time frame, it's interacting with those levels. What do you think about the NQ?
I think it's been pretty wild, like the level of continuation that we've seen since, it was an election kind of situation going on in the United States, but I think that really, we see these technical levels really respected. And one of the things that I want to pull up about on the daily chart that I really like is, I think a couple weeks ago we pointed out that this box range, this was like the biggest liquidity zone. And we were saying that even though things looked like they were really primed to break out, we wouldn't be shocked to see in the kind of like slurp into liquidity down here, even though we really wanted to see 20,230 hold. We could see a sort of a slurp of this zone and a regain for maybe a move to all-time high, and that is what we ended up getting. And the thing that's really crazy is that it's, if we see this zone after gaining again, it's just been straight up continuation for the like 4 days. I mean, it's been, if you were waiting for the reversion to take some, you know, higher low longs, you really were just kind of in awe of this move. You never got your chance to get in. It's been 1,200 points. But to your point, nothing goes straight up. I wouldn't be shocked to see some kind of reversion down to 20,750. The reason that I think that level, to your point, is important is this is the failure, after moving all the way up. Previously, this was the first like shift in the trend on the daily chart, like the first lower high here that ended up confirming the downtrend that we ended up reversing. So, essentially, this is the big level that we've gained, and there are a lot of breakout buyers there that could get slurped. Uh, Again, we are at all-time high. So, after seeing this huge move, there's really no reason to expect lower. But if we did, that's a prime level to really kind of take out. And then, 20,460 is also kind of the mid-range of that zone, and really the level that failed to send us to further lows off the initial swing low. I'm sorry, the swing after the first lower high there. So I wouldn't be too shocked to see some kind of retracement. I still think, given where we see now, I would be pretty shocked if we have like a huge retracement from here. I think that we're certainly primed for quite a bit higher. We've talked a lot about, fib levels when it's blue sky. We've got quite a bit further to go from our failure to failure fib if we pull up the weekly. Um, from 2020 to 2023, the next level isn't for like a couple thousand points higher. That's quite a bit of ways out on the time frame, but I could see a nice little retracement down for another pop higher. Into year end, I'm expecting further moves up, and at this point, we've taken out all the bearish sentiment. I think we're continuing up. Do you have anything to add before we move on?
No, I think that's all.
Yeah. All right. your ideas any different on the ES, or do you see pretty much the same stuff?
No, it's basically the same here on the ES. It does look more convincing that it's going to come down to 5,900, but you know, that's not a very big drop from where we are. So,
120 points, yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of the same look as where we broke the previous like level, and we're just moving higher. So until we get a kind of a really convincing reason to suggest that we're failing and moving lower, it's all just going to look like a retracement back to the previous breakout and potentially holding there and moving higher. So we'll have to see what happens this week.
Right.
Um, RTY, I know that we mentioned for quite some time that if we kind of broke the short origin that we'd be expecting higher, we really got this consolidation right at the level where when we made our previous all-time high, the level we came back down to, um, really right, the failure that sent us to that all-time high, we closed below, retested, and failed back below. So we've been really what we've been doing this whole time is retesting that failure level to see if we can use that as the level to gain. And when we did, we had a huge pop as we predicted if we were going to do that. We ended up moving higher, although in this case, it was pretty much just straight up continuation instead of the retest that we were expecting. Does not mean that we can't see a retest, but at this point, the only other level to really take out is all time high, and we are not very far away. We are less than 30 points away from all time high, or just around 30 points away. And I have a sneaking suspicion that I have a strong suspicion even that I think we'll probably end up moving quite a bit higher. Our fib projection on this isn't for just under 3,200, and I kind of have a pretty strong suspicion that we'll probably end up seeing that move sooner rather than later. So my initial ideas on this chart are we're either going to see a retracement back down to the breakout here, and we're going to hold and absolutely pump super hard, or we could take this level, fail again, fail to regain, and see some new lows. I don't really believe a lot in that one. Or we could take out the high, close back below, retest, and continue down. Those are maybe some options. This is a little busy, but those are kind of my main ideas. I am significantly more on the predisposition to thinking we're just going to continue higher. I mean, we've seen these huge breakouts. The shorts have been totally invalidated at this point. So I'm expecting higher unless we see something else, maybe akin to this move where we fail again and continue to new lows. What do you think? I'm pretty confident we're going to see new highs on this chart.
Yeah, I think we're going higher. I think we, you know, if I grab the round about the close of that previous weekly candle, it's right in the zone here, and that's exactly what I want to see to take out all time high. And so that's why I think that at least all time high will be achieved, and then what happens from there happens from there. We want to see higher highs and higher lows, but I do think it's almost guaranteed that we'll go up and probably get 2,600 here before we see any real retracement down back below. But it's just a thought. I certainly wouldn't long here. I would be looking lower or waiting for higher and then coming back. But I certainly wouldn't be longing now, expecting higher.
No, I mean, you're at this point, you're chasing the trade. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
we've had plenty of opportunities that we've outlined. Maybe not like quintessentially like, hey, this is the level you take the trade, but like, you know, if we see this, then starting to look for longs or shorts. And I think we've been pretty spot on our TY. I would love to see now that we have broken out here a little bit. I think a long around, 2290 is such a juicy level to long. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying like if we hit that, I'm longing it, but I will certainly be looking at that level to see what price does and looking for the longs to know because I think it could be an absolute banger given the actual price action here. But we will have to wait and see. I'm really curious to see what happens if when I think we're going to break the all-time high, like you're saying, and then what ends up ultimately happening after that is anyone's guess. that's really going to be the true test if we're going to continue pushing higher, if we're just going to fail for a swing failure, or if we're going to continue pushing higher. But all indications look like higher for now. We'll have to see. Gold, a little different. We've had a huge kind of mega pump rally recently. We've been talking about it week over week. It's just continuation. Little bit different last week. So finally got our first indication of potentially, like, if you're really paying attention to level hold, level to gain, this level early in the week, failing to regain is a failure. But we're really kind of just coming back to the level that we broke out from for a potential hold. We moved below, closed below, regained, and we're kind of sitting right on it right now. So if this holds, I mean, quite frankly, it's not a horrible long right now. That said, if we lose this level, I would be looking for potentially, a retest short and potentially moving back lower too. And we'll delete this, but the failure that's intercept from that zone, probably closer to 2550-ish. But this is the level that I would want to see. If we're going to reclaim 2760, I want to see 2680 hold. Now, we don't know if that's going to happen or not, but this is kind of what continuation looks like, right? You hold previous highs. So if this is the previous high that we broke from, we want to see this level hold. Up here is our failure because we had a previous defined high, gained it, did not hold it, and moved to new lows. So, you can always get a lot more minuscule with these things. You can go down to whatever time frame chart you want, but on the daily chart right now, I have to say it looks like lower if we don't hold this zone. But overall, I mean, if we kind of zoom out, it still looks like we're on our way up. But this could be, and the daily is giving us the clue, right? Maybe it is the beginning of potentially seeing a bit lower, and we'll just have to wait and see. But that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Could go either way. Definitely waiting to see what happens at this level on gold. What do you think?
Yeah, so on gold, I'd be looking to hold. I don't want to see a close here on the daily. I want to see it come up and ultimately regain 2760 for it to continue up. I think this is the exact area it needs to close above. Otherwise, it's going to continue down. And that's all about it. It rejected that level, as you can see, and then closed below this next one. But it has regained and is now testing it. And so this is a reasonable place to long, expecting potential for 2730 and 60 as an option. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's probably. I mean, I think those are
It's
the two
possible.
spots on the
Yeah.
charts worth paying attention. I also think, if you really are bearish on gold, I mean, you could say, if you're looking for lower, you could expect a test back up here and a fail again
Exactly.
and expect a lower low. And maybe that's kind of what you're trying to point out.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a better trade, although it does start to look a little bit more like potentially a regain if we do hold this spot first before testing that zone. But that's part of the, if you're going to take higher risk to reward, right, you're going to expect potentially higher chance of failure, right? With greater risk comes greater reward. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I do think that I think 2680 is where we're going to decide if we're going to continue up
Right.
or we're going to continue down. And maybe there will be a chance if we do hold here that 2760 ends up giving us the opportunity to short again. If it got up there at this point, sure, it'd be a great risk to reward trade. But if we do hold 2682, 2680, maybe we're kind of playing against holding the previous high. So it's going to be something where in both levels we need to watch and see what happens. I mean, if we just kind of pop in on the 1 minute right now. Oops, let's expand that out a little bit. Don't have my automatic situation going right now. So I mean, really, if we want to, you could almost move that down, but I won't adjust our level. it's kind of make or breaking right there.
Hmm.
2680 exactly. So I mean, either we're going to regain that spot and try it again higher, or we're going to kind of move to new lows, and that's why that spot is so important. And we knew that because that was the level where we initially failed and regained from, and that could happen again up here. So it's gonna be a watch and see kind of situation. Um, Sorry, there's not a lot of definitive commentary on that, but I mean that's just how these things go. We wait and see. Um,
Right. It's either the beginning of a move or it's not, and
and
that's the
that's the other
interesting thing.
opportunity is, these two short opportunities can
Right.
play out, or it regains the whole thing and continues. So, we'll see. Um, Moving on to the YM1, off the commodities here. The Dow's had kind of an insane move over the last the last week. I mean, it had like a 1,500 point day at one point. So, is there anything different in your mind on this?
Um, no, I certainly wouldn't be looking for longs above 43,000 here, 400. Um, this would be the earliest I'd be looking to take a long on the Dow. And we could even see lower than that, but um, that looks pretty good to me for continuation upward.
Yeah, I mean,
There's really not much to say.
it really isn't. I mean, this chart has been just crazy. Like it's been a stampede. Like we can't even move. I mean,
Hmm.
unless it tells us otherwise. Continuing higher, right? I mean, it's done such a good job of holding previous highs, and even when this is such a great example of losing the level, immediately regaining, and then immediately on the regain, just pumping to new
Hmm.
highs. So, I mean, you could start looking at 43,400, so 43,400 for longs at this point. But I'm with you. You can't break out buy in a market ever. It's just too risky. But even if you're like, oh, it looks like it's going up. Maybe it is. We want to buy the higher low, not the higher high. So, um, we'll see if we get strict continuation here, or if we get a retest and a potential long opportunity. But there's really not too much nuance to this other than we're just regaining and going. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
switching gears back to commodities a little bit. I think that, it's been, oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, my bad.
It's been tough to kind of call the oil market. I think we talked about this a little bit before we went live here. I think that it's tough to call, but I think that this looks bullish to me. So we've had a series of, you know, a push to new highs, failing, but then we regain this level, and we're as long as we hold 68.70 or 75 or really as low as 68. I think what it is that this is a new low, a regain, and a potential retest of a higher low for higher. This is a trade that we take all the time in the Discord. This is a quintessential setup, a reversal setup, so it's a really good risk to reward. You can never know for sure if it's going to play out, but it has great odds, and I'm thinking this is looking like a great setup. We talked about this zone before we went live here, where we can see all the wicks that are really kind of interested in this level. Failing to regain, push to new lows, regain. Actually, technically, super locally, this is a gain, push low. And because of these closes up here above the box, I think this higher low looks super valid. I would love a long opportunity at 68.75. I think this looks so good on oil. And I would expect that if we do gain this, I'm sorry, if we do hold this and gain the box, I think we can go all the way back to 75 in no time. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
On oil, I really like the zone it's at now. I know this is a very bearish looking red candle here, but I think it's not invalidating this swing here. Um, I really like these two candles because you got to realize price came down and then went back up and then gapped down here. And so this close isn't necessarily below this level that it last tried to hold. And so it's holding the top of this zone here that it last tried before it put in the new low. And that's why I think, along right here could be a great opportunity to see a very quick $3 or even higher to 75. I would probably take my first profit target here at about 72 and then my second at 74. That's pretty bullish, but I think that's a very real possibility. And if you're going to get stopped, you're going to get stopped right about here, and it's going to come down right where you said. And so it's a great risk to reward opportunity there. I would also long 68 here, like you were saying, for that exact same reason. That this is the start of the level that brought it up, and also the gap here. But I love both those two levels there, and I think oil's gonna go up. I know I've been saying that for months,
Yeah,
but
I think we agree. I'm gonna like kind of try to read the matrix here. So I'm super willing to be wrong here, but I agree this is a bearish candle. But I think in the context of all this, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking we come down here and we'll retest this zone. And I think that if we fail, we'll get my entry down here.
mm-hmm.
And then I think that's like a sick long. I think it will get the regain and then the pump up here. So I'm thinking I'm gonna do one of these, which we haven't done in a while. I'm gonna put my reputation on it. I'm gonna say that's my entry and my trade, and I'm targeting. I love your area, 74. We'll put it just under point 0.5 there, 0.49.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I love this idea because I think that super locally, I think I actually do think we'll end up making new lows. I'm not guaranteeing it. This is my idea. Not financial advice, right? But I think that if we do tag this level, there's a pretty high likelihood of us coming back up there and making new highs. I like this spot. I'm gonna pop this out just in case it takes a while, but I think I'm looking for this zone, and I'm willing to stake my reputation on
I like it.
it. Cool. All right, let's go to the dollar. What are your thoughts on the dollar?
Well, it pumped quite a bit once we got down to 103 again. You can see how they just kind of came below this low, and then immediately it just was almost straight up. We did see a test back down on this level here that we regained, and that's also relevant here as it took us down. This is probably more relevant, but this isn't irrelevant either. And so that's why we came down and held that and have continued up. I do think that we'll continue up. Let's see real quickly. I think that it's come down a little bit since we started talking about it this evening, but I do think that it'll regain this level here because of the closes up here above this level. If it was going to be another reshort here, it would have just reacted, but it's not. They're buying it up at that level. And so that's why I think they'll take this out and continue on their way up. And that looks like a pretty good level there. I certainly wouldn't be longing it before taking out this low here at 104.9. But there is a potential here at the lower level of this zone at about 104.8. That could be an option. But again, I do think it's more likely that it's going to close back up in the 105.2 area. And then continue up from there. And you can see on the weekly how if we do continue up, it's going to very quickly turn into some stacked stop losses here on the short side. So that's forced buying, which could, take it to the next level. So that's pretty exciting for longs in the near future. If they can continue up, there's going to be some opportunity for big pumping. What do you think?
We've talked a lot about how there was a lot of regaining that needed to happen on the dollar before we started talking about it bullishly again and wanting to see the higher ranges of potentially seeing the dollar move higher. I think that we've regained all of those things, and even the most local price action after that fact looks bullish to me. I really like that we took out this level 104.2, briefly, took out some of the breakouts and have regained, and even at this like retest
Mm-hmm.
level here, 104.2 was just a
Perfect.
wick, and we've just
Yeah.
kept going. I mean, this is as bullish as it gets, and to kind of pull up the weekly chart as you showed before. I mean, this is look at the wicks on the weekly chart down here, and they just
Mm-hmm.
closing green. This looks like we're on a freaking beeline
Yeah, they're
to
continuing to
stop
close
on the
every
shorts.
time
I mean, I
above.
think we're coming for short stops. Here's the one thing that I would be really interested in is if we can take out 106.4, are we going to see continuation or like a big pump? I'm not even that far, but are we going to take out some serious stops and then close back below and fail again, or are we going to keep going? I will say that if that happens, I would want to see something like this, maybe a close below and a fail. And I would think if you're a bull, you want to see this zone 104.2 hold again and come back up. Now, that's a huge long term prediction. I get that. But I think if you're going to see this swing failure move like this, you're going to want to look for something like that. However, I think that's also a pretty niche scenario. I think that if we take out these stops, we have taken out so many stops on this kind of liquidity hunt down. There's so much liquidity behind this pump. Um, I think that we might even see really a higher low up way up there at maybe 105.8, something like that. And we could see massive continuation. Now, that's a weekly chart idea, much more locally, like you were describing. Um, I think that this is just pretty much prime for continuation up. I think really it's going to depend on what do we see at 105.8. What happens when we get to this big liquidity pool and really kind of get all the stops and the PvP, so to speak, about people are really defending their big positions up there. What's going to happen? I think we could either see some capitulation and some big pumps, or we could see some higher lows and some attempts again. But at this point, having gained 104.2, I think we're moving back up. That's my basic assumption at this point, until proven otherwise.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. Banks had an insane week. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they basically put in a new low and immediately cranked it. And they did a pretty fantastic gap there. Let's take a look at the weekly to get some perspective.
Look at the
The,
volume of that candle, by the way.
yeah, that's pretty wild. Is that
Now,
the?
now, why did that happen though? Now it took out the invalidation of the shorts, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why all of the volume is so big there because that was the massive size short position that was from way before any of this happened. So that level that failed right there, 60.55, that's a huge red candle because that's what pushed us below, and we had all those shorts. We took that out and invalidated all of those shorts. And so there was a huge short squeeze essentially in the short term on KRE there. I think that's really worth pointing out, and why the technicals that we draw them this way makes sense is because we're really identifying the key levels of where big, positions actually exist.
Right. And that's why when that's what we mean by forced buying is there's stop losses here, 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 and that's why we see this big candle as it comes up in price because people are forced to buy to get out of their positions.
Yeah, and I think just looking more at this weekly chart, I really think the story is great on the weekly chart at this point. Given that that is the invalidation, we took out 60.46 or somewhere around there. 60.5,
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it. It is not unreasonable to see a retracement to that exact zone, I would not be shocked to see a retracement of another 5 points on carry back to that exact level. And then I would really like to see that hold, either that or 59.5 there. You could call that, so 60.5 is sort of the invalidation as we marked it out. 59.5 is kind of the super local failure that sent us up. But in that tiny little zone is somewhere that I would absolutely be looking for a nice juicy long, and I'd really love to see that hold as a higher low and a continuation all the way back up to you know, either the high 60s or 71 that we have marked up there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, it was a big pump. I don't know what else we have to say about carry other than, I mean, if we pop down to the 4 hours or anything else. No, it's just a big gap, and we'll see
Right.
what happens. But is there anything else to talk about before we wrap up, or think
No, other than gap fill looks likely, but
this is
beyond
another
that,
reason? Yeah,
mm-hmm.
exactly why it looks like that potentially this was such a huge pop that it would not be unreasonable to see something
Right.
come back and kind of stop everyone out before it'll stop out the longs. It just longed on the breakout, right? But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I mean, there's not really too much else to cover. So I mean, it's been an interesting week, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens like into the end of the year if we get just straight up continuation into higher valuations, or if we see some retracements. But thanks again for tuning into the weekly Trader Hub market review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. We'll see you next week.
Till next time.